Hi, welcome back to Honor of Kings here on Kingdom in Context. I'm Sean Griffin, accompanied by my awesome co-host.
Ken I direct. Hey, Sean, how's it going, brother? Thank you, brothers and sisters, for joining us once again. We appreciate it.
We do. Thanks to you for joining me, Ken, as always. You're a blessing, brother, and I'm glad to have you here studying the Word with me, man. It's a lot of fun. We get to do this. If this is your first time to see Honor of Kings, we encourage you to hit the subscribe button, tap the bell. That way you get notified all of our new videos, as well as Ken. He's got his own personal channel. It's called Hanging on His Words. Ken, do you want to explain your channel real quick?
Yes, absolutely. As you said, Hanging on His Words, that can be found over on YouTube as well as on Facebook. And it's a relatively new channel. It's only been around for about half a year now, Sean. And I'm having fun with it. It's a channel that I'm hoping to proclaim the gospel of the kingdom of God in a unique and creative way, and just gets people interested in, bringing the discussion to family and friends in a way that'll also maybe get them to ask questions. So just like we do on this show, Sean, here at Honor of Kings, I want people asking questions and, seeing what it is exactly they believe and why they believe.
Well, this week we're going to continue our look into the book of Tobit. This is a book that used to be in the modern American canon of 66, but about 140 years ago, I believe, it was taken out. And so we are taking a deep dive into it, going line by line. And this week we're going to be in like chapters 5 through 10, just kind of taking a breakdown and following up with the story of Tobit. And as a quick reminder, in case you haven't seen the last episode where we went through the first 4 chapters, Tobit is an Israelite from the tribe of Naphtali, and he was invaded and scattered by the kings of Assyria, as recorded in the book of First Kings, chapters 15 through 17. And his tribe and his whole area, the whole land of Gilead where he was, and near Galilee, and the whole area of Naphtali was invaded, and they were scattered, and many taken into captivity back to Assyria in the town of Nineveh. The famous Nineveh, and this is why this book is so awesome, Ken, right? Because this book seems to be a direct link to Jonah. And that's, to me, that's the book of Jonah has always been kind of like a big question mark, because the historical components there doesn't tell you who the king of Assyria or the king of Nineveh was in the book of Jonah, but in the book of Tobit, we could find out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what initially piqued my interest in reviewing the book and testing it to the scriptures, because as you just said, we don't see much of Nineveh being talked about other than in the book of Jonah, the book of Nahum. And it's interesting because Jonah is actually mentioned by name, and we're going to come to that in latter chapters in probably another episode. But yeah, it's very fascinating. It definitely gives us more of a historical backdrop for the book of Jonah itself. And so these two pair very well.
Very well, yeah. And so it also helps us fill in this big theological issue with the book of Jonah, which was Jonah was sent as a prophet to Nineveh to tell them to repent. Well, the definition in scripture of repenting is turning back from your lawless behavior back to the behavior of Yahweh's commands, his instructions, which is considered lawfulness or righteousness. And the whole reason that the northern tribes of Israel were scattered to begin with is because they were engaging in lawlessness and idolatry, worshiping false gods and the gods of Baal. And as a result of this, they had transgressed the covenant, and just as prophesied and just as promised, the Father said, if you do this, then I will eventually, and you'll be invaded by the surrounding nations and scattered to the surrounding nations. And this is what has happened at this point in the history of the timeline. And so this means there's a lot of Israelites from the northern houses that are in Nineveh. So it makes perfect sense, Ken, if Jonah is sent as a prophet from the southern kingdom of Judah to these people that have been taken into captivity in Nineveh and still telling them to repent, which is amazing, right? Because it really rubs against that traditional narrative that we've heard that claims that the Father fully kicked them out of covenant at the point where he scattered them from the land. But I don't think that narrative is true. It seems like there's quite a few scriptures and even big component pieces, as we're just discussing, that seems to contradict that popular narrative, that the northern house of Israel, even though they were scattered out of the land, they still had the opportunity to repent and stay in covenant. And this is actually what we're seeing Tobit himself do, which is wonderful. He's keeping the commands and being faithful to Yahweh.
Yes, absolutely. That's correct, Sean. And as we were talking about in, was it episode 1 or 2, when we were in the book of Jubilees, Yahweh always remembers his covenant with his people, and he will never forsake his people from being in covenant with him. So even just that book kind of debunks that unfortunate theory that's prevalent in our mainstream theological circles is that this northern kingdom, like you said, was divorced out of a covenant for quite a very long time, and it just isn't a consistent message with the rest of the scriptures, and also some of these extra biblical books that were conveniently removed. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And in fact, I actually did a separate whole video called Identity Crisis Averted. I'll flash it up here on the screen for folks that haven't seen it, and go check that out, because I go through all the scriptures in the modern American canon of 66, all the way from Leviticus to Judges to Chronicles, Second Chronicles, to First and Second Kings, and different places where it shows that this narrative that's being taught is sorely incorrect, and that the northern tribes were still in covenant. And many of them had actually fled and assimilated into the southern kingdom as well over time. And so I had to piece that together, without taking Tobit into account, right?
Yeah.
Which means I didn't fully understand some of the narrative that I was reading in the book of Jonah. So I was just piecing together that narrative from what was already in the scriptures. But when we include Tobit, which used to be in our Bibles in America, but was taken out, causing us to really understand the full narrative of Jonah, then we've got the entire book of Jonah rubbing against this narrative that says the northern house was not able to come back into covenant until Jesus came, just because they were scattered, quote unquote, divorced from the land. So that narrative is a false one, right? And to those who have taught that, and to those who are thinking that currently, and just maybe for the first time hearing this realization that we're trying to share with you from the scriptures, this is why we're going through these apocryphal books. Because if this book of Tobit, as we looked in the first chapter, went through the first 4 chapters of this book last episode, and we saw how many, dozen or more things that were lining up in them paralleling the canon, and theologically we're lining up, and historically we're lining up. If that means if we had this book in our Bible this whole time, we would have never had that confusion brought to us. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this is what happens when you take books out of the Bible and you take chunks out of the plot, create huge plot holes that people just have to fill in with guesswork. And this is where we get rampant eisegesis, rampant opinion that's not truly supported by scripture. And it's not that people are trying to deceive anyone. It's just that they're doing the best they can to try to make sense of what's in front of them, because they don't have all the puzzle pieces, basically. And so this is where we come up with all these errant doctrines. And that's why, it's on Ken and I's heart to study these books. And you can watch us do it through these episodes of Honor of Kings, so we can try to fill in these plot holes that are in scripture. And we're excited about it, man. So I'm excited to get to it. Ken, do you want to read the first chapter here in chapter 5, or do you want me to start?
Yeah, absolutely. I can start, Sean.
Okay. Thanks, brother.
All right. So chapter 5, verse 1. Then Tobias answered him, "Father, I will do everything that you have commanded me. But how can I obtain the money when I do not know the man?" Then Tobit gave him the receipt and said to him, "Find a man to go with you, and I will pay him wages as long as I live, and go and get the money." So he went to look for a man, and he found Raphael, who was an angel. But Tobias did not know it. Tobias said to him, "Can you go with me to Rages in Media? Are you acquainted with that region?" The angel replied, "I will go with you. I'm familiar with the way, and I have stayed with our brother Gabael." Then Tobias said to him, wait for me, and I shall tell my father." And he said to him, "Go and do not delay." So he went in and said to his father, "I have found someone to go with me." He said, "Call him to me, so that I may learn to what tribe he belongs, and whether he is a reliable man to go with you." So Tobias invited him in. He entered, and they greeted each other. Then Tobit said to him, "My brother, to what tribe and family do you belong? Tell me." But he answered, "Are you looking for a tribe and a family, or for a man whom you will pay to go with your son?" And Tobit said to him, "I should like to know, my brother, your people and your name." He replied, "I am Azarias, the son of the great Ananias, one of your relatives." All right, so here we go, Sean. We've just got, some of the narrative here going along.
Okay, so this one is a fun chapter, brother. We get Raphael the angel has showed up, right? Because what we read from last week in the previous chapter was that this angel was basically at the point of Tobit making a prayer, and then in a whole nother city simultaneously, hundreds of miles away, there was another young lady named Sarah, the daughter of Raguel, making a prayer, even though her prayer was different. They were both praying at the same time. And this guy, this archangel of the presence, this Raphael guy, was at that point kind of commissioned to go down and answer both prayers. And so here we have him kind of show up on the scene, introduce himself to Tobit. Yeah, and it seems like right here with Raphael being involved, this is what we see referenced in the book of Hebrews, right, Ken, in chapter, what is it, 13?
Yeah, Sean, it's chapter 13, verse 2, and it says, "Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares." Now, Sean, I used to always think that the writer of Hebrews, which I believe is Paul, was referencing when the angels showed up to Lot's house. But I think there's a good case that can be made for the book of Tobit because of all of what we're going to read here and what we've already read about this angel Raphael kind of mysteriously showing up and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the Genesis 18 moment. Abraham knew those were angels, right? Because he said he saw the Lord approaching.
Yeah.
He knew what angels were, what they meant, right? Which was they representatives of the Lord. And it kind of seemed like the same way with Lot as well, right? Because these weren't just normal men. And yeah, I agree with you. I'm trying to think of any other moment in Scripture where there's angelic interaction and someone doesn't know they're interacting with an angel.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I guess maybe a case to be made with Jacob, right? Because it says that there was a man that he was wrestling, but I believe that he knew that he was wrestling an angel because later on we see Jacob saying something about how the angel that was with him or something like that. So I think he already knew that that's who it was. But.
Yeah, and how many men do you wrestle for a blessing?
I know, right? A lot of people want to say that, well, it had to be like a pre-incarnate Yeshua or something like that. Like, how can a man wrestle an angel, right? Angels aren't they like superior in strength and all this other stuff? Yes, I do believe that's the case, but yeah. I think we also need to remember that these patriarchs of old were really strong individuals. We see Abraham take 318 men and go bring back Lot and his family from those kings, right? Those kings and the giants. And so these are warrior individuals. And when.
Yeah, I don't think that Jacob was, an effeminate person by any means. I definitely think he was strong. I mean, but obviously the angel had superior power when it came down to it, because all he had to do was somehow touch his hip, and Jacob is, limping for life, so to speak. So it's almost like he's letting him hang on to him for as long as he can. But it is if you've ever wrestled anybody, it's difficult to hang on to somebody for more than an hour. I mean, much less all night.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely some strength involved. And I think that like I'm saying, I just theorized that he knew that it's not just a normal man. He wouldn't have been going to those lengths to get a blessing from heaven. And so, I can't think of any other moment where there's an angel that showed up and the people didn't realize it was an angel. Most of them were in fear or awestruck or bowed down, or, what I mean?
Yeah.
Like even in the case of Samson's parents, right? The angel, like at the end, they said, "Oh my gosh, we saw what they say, we saw God, or we saw Elohim," and they were afraid they were going to die. And so, because they knew they had seen an angelic being. And this could be, you're right, bro. This could be a great case to be made that Tobit is what's being referenced in the book of Hebrews.
Yeah. I mean,
since this used to be part of Scripture.
Yeah. I mean, it was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the Western canon, the Roman Catholic, aside from the Roman Catholic canon, it's in every other canon of like all the other traditions, right? The Eastern tradition, the Oriental tradition. So I think it's the Protestant, the Lutheran, and the Anglican canons that don't have this book. Every other one does, which is interesting. But just even the concept of entertaining angels unawares, I mean, it's not like Raphael here is only with the guy for a short moment and then leaves. He's with him for quite some time, right, throughout this journey that we're going to read about. And so that, in my opinion, is what entertaining an angel unawares really embodies.
Yeah, I agree with you, bro. That makes a lot of sense. All right. Yeah, it's interesting. So, and of course, when I first read this, I kind of struggled with the part where Tobit asks him, "What family you from? What's your name?" Because obviously the son Tobit goes out and sees this guy just ready to travel, just kind of sitting there. And he's like, brings it back. He's like, oh, I already found somebody that's, that's going to help me go with. And he says he knows like exactly where we need to go. Right. So it seems kind of suspicious. So it makes sense that Father Tobit would be like, oh, well, hey, who are you? What's going on? What
Yeah.
family are you from? Kind of reminds me of that, like that mafioso feel, it's like, what family are you from? Who's your mother? So, it's just like, it makes me laugh because I'm trying to look at, like, I can just imagine, even with Tobit being blind, he's like looking at him crossways, he's like, what family are you from?
Yeah.
And because he's just trying to figure out who I'm about to send my son with.
Yeah.
And so here's this interesting part here, is that the angel actually says to him a name. He doesn't say I'm Raphael. He says I'm Azarias, of son of the great Ananias, one of your relatives.
Yeah.
And you're like, what?
Well, that's interesting, Sean, because we know that angels can, they can show up in different forms. They can come
Yeah.
as men, they can come as various things. And I'm just wondering, did this guy look familiar? Did he actually represent this Azarias, son of the great Ananias, a relative that they may have seen? Like, did he actually look like him?
Wow, like a instant, clone duplicate.
Yeah.
Just to kind of pass the muster, pass the grade. Here's what I'm saying to the viewer, though. This has always posed an interesting conundrum, if you will, for the idea that an angel can show up and interact with mankind and them not know it. So this usually means that, because basically, Ken, like if I say I don't know, say like I'm traveling down the interstate and I get a flat tire and I'm struggling and it's like a dangerous scenario or whatever, and God sends an angel to help me, um, what are the limitations, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, because think of all the practicality that goes into this. So say a truck pulls up behind me off the side of the road and says, hey, you need help? Looks like you're, struggling to get that tire changed. You know what I mean? And it's like an older man with a mustache and a flannel shirt on, you know what I mean? He gets out of an old 78 Dodge truck or something, and he's like walking up to me, and I'm like, okay, well, sure, man. Yeah. If you got the right lug nut, because mine broke or something, I don't know, whatever it was that I needed help with, he's able to help me with it. And he does it. And then, as we hear so many stories about this kind of thing from people, as soon as he drives down the road, I can't see him anymore. He's disappeared. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, gosh, did God send an angel just now? Like, that's amazing. Like, the guy told me his name, but I don't really know who he was or what, what I'm saying? I can't remember his plates. I don't know. Was he even from the state? Like it, and so all these things kind of happen, and you're wondering if an angel showed up and was trying not to be represented as an angel to fulfill the verse in Hebrews 13:2, then I guess they're not going to tell us their actual name, right?
It would seem to be the case, Sean. I mean, I guess my question is, if he does, like if the angel does show up and just say, hey, I'm Raphael, I was sent by the Father, and we just heard all your prayers and stuff, and now I'm going to come and help you. Is that going to change the course of what's going to take place after that in any way? Like, are Tobias and Tobit going to freak out and like not go on this journey or something? You know what I mean? Is going to change the course of what's going to happen in the future if he doesn't come and mask himself in some sort of familiarity that these people can trust, aside from just revealing himself like plainly as an angel. So I don't know.
Or would they not even believe him, right? And then therefore not even let him help because they think that he's just lying,
Yeah.
And this actually kind of goes back to my question about the Pharisees and Jesus, because I don't study the Talmud, and for the viewer out there, I don't recommend anyone study the Talmud. I think that is just a book of opinions of men that have been held in higher regard than the actual commandments of God. And I think that's what's gotten a lot of people into a lot of trouble. And that's what Yeshua was constantly battling against in the four Gospels of the New Testament, was the traditions and opinions of men, as he stated in Mark 7 and Matthew 23. And so, but I've always wondered, Ken, you remember that moment where they pick up stones to stone Jesus because they claim that he was making himself God?
Yes.
And I always wondered, like, was it blasphemous? Like, what if he wasn't? Because he clearly expressed to them that he wasn't saying he was God, but that he was the Son of God, that he was sent by the Father, right? Like he says that in multiple places. So, lovingly, for the viewer out there that thinks he was claiming to be God in that passage, I would encourage you to read the fuller context of the chapter that's in, plus before and after, because the book of John fleshes out the idea that Jesus is always referring back to the Father in great, great detail. But these Pharisees pick up stones to stone him. And I wonder if there's some sort of law in the Talmud that they come up with over time that said you can't claim to be an angel, or you can't claim to be an Elohim, basically, an Elohim status. Because like he says, they say to him, and you claiming just merely a man, claim to be a God.
Yeah.
Or claim to be God, but being merely a man. And so I wonder in the original Hebrew if that was the word Elohim, or if that was actually, the word theos or kurios. And where they translated that, if it was originally Elohim, because I don't think it didn't say that you claim to be the Father or you claim to be Yahweh.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
I've made that connection before too, man. I've asked the same question. If that was somehow an oral tradition that got passed along, and because it's clear it's not in the Tanakh from anywhere I can see.
Right.
So,
yeah, because the Tanakh constantly says, I'm going to send my servant to branch, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to send the prophet, and they even asked him, John the Baptist's disciples, right, were sent to Jesus to even ask him, are you the one that we're to expect? Are you the prophet to come? So it's like they already had this idea that there was somebody coming, but I just wonder if they come up with their own rules to say a man cannot claim to be an angel or an Elohim,
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me, Sean, because of all the stuff that has been added throughout the years, right?
Yeah.
But if anyone knows watching, if they have seen anything or have read anything, can you please put it in the comments? Because we're definitely interested in seeing if there's a connection there.
Yeah, because we don't study the Talmud, nor do we have any interest in it. But it makes me wonder where some of these objections came from the Pharisees, because they were very indoctrinated in their own personal opinions.
Yeah.
And so, it just makes me wonder.
John, even further, going back to talking about Raphael here and why he didn't just simply say that I'm Raphael the angel, I'm here to help you, and him just putting on this different character that was familiar to these guys. Technically, he's lying, right, Sean? But we do see elsewhere in the scriptures where lying is needed in order to have the further an objection met, right? So like, thinking about, just off the top of my head, like the harlot at Jericho when the spies came, right? She lied to them to save the men that came spying, right? I'm just wondering, like, if Raphael had to do that, like I said earlier, if he had to do that in order to keep, the objective that he was sent to do, if it would be met properly. Otherwise, if he would have straight up said it, it would have somehow changed the course of what would have taken place moving forward. So.
Like I said, it could have changed how they behaved, or they could have rejected them altogether. And ultimately, though, I just want to make sure the viewer understands that we do not condone lying. We do not suggest that the Father condones lying. We are saying there's circumstantial cases where the truth was not told, basically, or not just to say it like that, but like we've been talking about with the angels. Like, if they're going to show up and they don't want you to know who they are, then they're probably going to give you a name that's maybe not their true creation name, you know what I'm saying? And they're not going to just straight up tell you, I'm here as a supernatural being to help you. You know what I mean? Like, it was because they're letting you walk out your journey with faith and patience, and they're trying to help you as sent by God. And there are circumstantial cases, like you mentioned, Ken, in the story in the book of Joshua. But at the same time, we have a very, very specific command in the Torah that we're not to lie to our brethren.
That's right.
Okay. And so I'll put that up here on the screen as well. And this is so. We have to kind of keep all this in context of it. The Father is sending someone to do good, right? The whole purpose of this, as we found out in chapter 4, was that Raphael was sent to heal the blindness of Tobit and to help this other young lady who was trying to be married, but she has a demon that's really oppressing her, basically. So he came to actually heal some things, which is what his job is, as we discussed from the book of Enoch.
Yeah.
And it's not that he's trying to lie to deceive or to just to hurt anybody. But and now at the same time, this guy's sent by God on a specific mission by Yahweh. I would not encourage anyone to take it upon themselves to tell partial truths, half truths, or a lie because you think what you're doing is good. Does that make any sense, Ken?
I
I
agree
just
for clarification.
I just want to throw this caveat, you know what I'm saying, just in case people get the wrong idea. Because unfortunately, when it comes to this topic, I've seen people run with the wrong idea.
Yeah.
So we're not the Father, and we don't know all things. So like I would not encourage anyone to think that we're suggesting that you could lie in order for your own justification just because you think it's good wisdom in the scenario that you're in. I would always encourage the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Amen to that. And at the end of this book, we actually do see Raphael, clarify who he really is.
Yeah.
And we see that it's because he had to do that because of the objectives that he had to meet. So
yeah, absolutely, man. Do you want me to pick up in the verse 12?
Absolutely.
All right, verse 12, he said, he replied, I think you already read this one. Actually, I'm sorry. Verse 13. He says, and then Tobit said to him, you are welcome, my brother. Do not be angry with me because I tried to learn your tribe and family. You're a relative of mine and of good and noble lineage. For I used to know Ananias and Jotham and the sons of the great Shemaiah when we went together to Jerusalem to worship and offered the firstborn of our flocks and the tithes of our produce. They did not go astray in the error of our other brethren. My brother, you come of good stock. But tell me, what wages am I to pay you? A drachma a day, an expense for yourself as for my son? And besides, I will add to your wages if both return safe and sound. So they agreed to these terms. And then he said to Tobias, get ready for the journey and good success to you both. So his son made the preparations for the journey, and his father said to him, go with this man. God who dwells in heaven will prosper your way, and may his angel attend you. So they both went out and departed, and the young man's dog was with them. But Anna, his mother, began to weep and said to Tobit, why have you sent our child away? Is he not the staff of our hands as he goes in and out before us? Do not add money to money, but consider it as rubbish as compared to our child, for the life that is given to us by the Lord is enough for us. And Tobit said to her, do not worry, my sister. He will return safe and sound, and your eyes will see him. For a good angel will go with him. His journey will be successful, and he will come back safe and sound. So she stopped weeping.
Yeah, Sean, it seems right there in verse 13 that, and I could be wrong, but just based off of everything leading up to this point in this narrative, Tobit has had it rough, right? And so it's almost like he needed some reassurance that someone good who wasn't going to go out and kill his son or try to take advantage of him needed to accompany him along this journey, right? And so I guess this Azariah guy was the perfect fit, right? It's like, I know who you are. You're a good stock. You're a relative. You did the feasts and stuff like that, and you're good. So I can trust you to be a companion with my son and send you along your way. So another reason why perhaps Raphael had to choose a different, a disguise, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. I like the fact that he does mention that he still remembers people he used to go to the feast in Jerusalem with. So to me, this kind of gives us this idea that, obviously it seems as this Tobit is of the marrying age. So I'm not sure exactly how old the father Tobit was when he had son Tobit, right? But I think we read on later that at this point, father Tobit is 56 years old. But the reason I'm saying that is because it just makes me, he's talking about it like it's still a fresh memory, oh, I used to go with these guys to the feast in Jerusalem, you know what I mean? And so it's like a bit of nostalgia he's engaging in. And I'm just wondering, it's at least, in my opinion, 2 decades after they've been taken into captivity.
Yeah, I would say.
Because of the age of son Tobit, at least, if not longer. But I just love that his heart, because remember what it said, he used to go to the temple and not to the Bethel calf of Baal. And he used to worship and adore the Lord at the temple. And I just, he's still talking about it just in random conversation, it's just, I know, it's just, this is this little stuff. Cause like I've told you before, I'm kind of a writer at heart, and I've self-published a couple books, and I've got other novels I'm working on. And I just, these little details that are thrown in there that add substance to a character just are so endearing to me. I just think they're awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just wondering, John, if there's any other literature out there that even mentions this Azariah, son of the great Ananias.
I don't know.
I haven't come across anything, but it would be interesting to see if there's any, literature out there that exists that could correspond with this family lineage here.
Yeah, because unfortunately, it doesn't give us a detailed list of the families that were invaded and scattered into captivity
Yeah.
from the northern houses. Because, like in Nehemiah and Ezra, it tells you kind of a list of the people that came back from
Yeah.
Babylonian exile, but it doesn't tell you, because a lot of them, unfortunately, were killed, so it doesn't tell you all the people that were invaded and scattered.
Yeah.
But anyway, but yeah, man. And so he's offering the angel in verse 15. He's offering 14 and 15. He's offering the angel money. And I think that that's interesting, right? That this is the deal he's trying to make just to ensure a safe and sound return.
Yeah.
And here's the peculiar part, Ken, is he actually says both to his wife and to his son, may his angel attend you. And I know that I know that we just had this conversation here where the angel tells him he's of a certain family, a quote unquote, a good stock of relatives. But it makes me wonder, like if Tobit had an inkling suspicion, of just who this guy might have really been, or just who this guy was not.
Yeah, it could be. I could see how you could make that connection. I haven't seen anywhere else in scripture where, someone is petitioning God as they're praying to send his angel, to help a person out along the way in a journey or something like that. Have you? Because it's, like I said, this is the first time I've ever read that. And that's kind of how I understand it, is that he's asking the Father, prosper his way and send an angel, or I don't know if it's his angel as in Yahweh's angel to guide them along the way, or Tobias's angel, because apparently we have angels associated to everyone that gets born on the earth. So
from verse 16, it makes me think, because he mentions God who dwells in heaven will prosper your way, and then he uses the pronoun his. It makes me think it's talking about God's angel,
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately he may just be assuming the idea of the guardian angel already assigned to people that he knew about. So I don't know. It's interesting.
I like how they tag along the young man's dog with them, right? It's like, why would you throw that in there? I think it's twice in this book where the dog is a little character that tags along with them. It's funny.
Yeah, this is pretty interesting to me. He's like, oh, and the dog. It's kind of like a Huck Finn adventure, or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else in this chapter?
I think we can continue on.
Okay.
All right. In chapter 6 here. Now, as they proceeded on their way, they came at evening to the Tigris River and camped there. Then the young man went down to wash himself. A fish leapt up from the river and would have swallowed the young man. And the angel said to him, "Catch the fish." So the young man seized the fish and threw it up on the land. Then the angel said to him, "Cut open the fish and take the heart and liver and gall and put them away safely." So the young man did as the angel told him. And they roasted and ate the fish. And they both continued on their way until they came near to Ecbatana. Then the young man said to the angel, "Brother Azarias, of what use is the liver and heart and gall of the fish?" He replied, "As for the heart and liver, if a demon or evil spirit gives trouble to anyone, you make a smoke from these before the man or woman, and that person will never be troubled again. And as for the gall, anoint with it a man who has white films in his eyes, and he will be cured." Interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, how big is this fish?
It's almost big as Jonah's fish, it sounds like.
I mean, this thing's about to, and then of course he catches him. So what? I guess Tobias is an accomplished fisherman with a strong line that can catch a fish that big enough to threaten to swallow him whole. I don't know, man. It's kind of a unique way it's worded there, but and that means if it's a big fish, then the heart, liver, and gall that he's going to be pulling out of him are going to be relatively good size as well.
Yeah, that's right. Sean, actually, I'm not sure if we're going to be covering this book this season. I know we had mentioned possibly doing it. The Testament of Solomon. It actually mentions that. It mentions the demon Asmodeus by name, and that he can be scared off by the gall and the liver and all that stuff that we see Raphael telling Tobias about. And I think it actually names the specific fish, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember. I think it was likened to a catfish, but that doesn't really make sense because we know that those aren't technically clean. You can't ingest catfish from what I understand because they don't have the scales. But I can't remember the exact name of it, but maybe we'll flash it up here. I'll find it and then we'll flash the name of it up there. But I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to promote this book either, brothers and sisters, the Testament of Solomon, that is, because I think there are some issues in it, but it's just, I can't help but think about this particular instance being referred to in that book by name. So it's just interesting information.
And in the future, we're going to test the Testament of Solomon.
Yeah.
And we'll do Honor Kings episodes on that one as well. But of course, I think you were right to assume that the fish, since they're eating it, is a clean fish, because obviously it's an angel who's told them to eat it, and also Tobias himself, whose father, it even said it in the very first chapter that they refused to eat the meat of the Gentiles.
That's right.
That they were eating clean, even in their captivity. Tobit and his family. So it would be natural to assume that the son is still abiding in those commands.
Yeah.
And then, of course, then he said the angel tells them that the gall can be used for the anointment of the white film in someone's eyes, and he'll be cured. So that seems to be what Father Tobit needs at this point.
Yes, exactly. And like I said, that runs perfectly with 1 Enoch 40, verse 9, where we're told that Raphael is set over all the disease and all the wounds of the children of men. And then, as we've mentioned in other episodes, the book of Jubilees, chapter 10, where it talks about these angels that were giving Noah and his sons the medicines and stuff that can counteract the diseases that these demons, produce in man. So,
and that's wild. What a book to have, man. And to see like something like this to even be suggested, that some random fish, I'm guessing they're at the Tigris River or the Euphrates River. I'm not sure. They're at the Tigris, right? Verse 1. They're at the Tigris River. So this means it could have been a fish that came in from the ocean, but ultimately, there's some bigger game fish in this particular river. And what kind of fish is it? And the gall within that particular fish can cure this particular type of white film that comes from bird droppings of particular birds. So it's just like all the little unique peculiarities of the malady and the remedy. It's like the Father knew, and all the creation works together for our healing.
Yeah.
I used to, I went on a journey several years ago. Well, it was like 2013, and I went down to Belize, right next to Guatemala, and I went to see some Mayan pyramids. And it was pretty interesting, man, because we took this tour bus with this other group, and we went halfway up this mountain, and then we had to get out of the bus and walk the rest of the way up to the plateau of the mountain where these pyramids were built on top of the mountain. Really interesting stuff. But there was a tree that grows around the actual mountain that the tour guide pointed out to us, and it had these blue, these blue roots coming out of the tree roots, right? These little blue sprigs.
Okay.
And he told us that if you cut those little blue roots, it's poison. It's like super deadly poison, to kill you basically within a day. And then there was, as we walked further, there was little red roots that were growing out of the tree roots. And he said, if you cut the red roots, that's the cure for the blue poison.
Wow.
And they both grew around the mountain in the same clump of trees, and apparently the ancient Mayans used to use them in rituals and different things like that. So take some of the poison tip, put on their arrows and things like that. So it's interesting. But yeah, like the Father made everything to work and balance out each other, Yeah. And so
yeah, absolutely. That's fascinating, Sean. Sean, another thing before we move on is, and I know we mentioned this before, but this book straight out tells you that there's demons in existence, right? I mean, we're given information here specifically from Raphael, a remedy to these demonic entities, or specifically this one.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people, Sean, that are starting to think that all the demons that we see in the New Testament are just kind of mental health issues that Yeshua is helping cure, instead of it being physical demons that can possess and take over and bring about strife and disease and all these things like we see in the book of Enoch, right? So once again, this is yet another book that I think is important because it's technically clumped into what we would call the Old Testament period. And here we have a demon, John. So it's not, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're all over the place. And this is why, in our opinion, books like Enoch and Jubilees are so important to understand and to read, because it straight up tells you where demons came from. And nothing else in the American canon does that. which leads people to those extremely poorly formed conclusions like you were talking about.
Yeah.
So it's, absolutely, man. But then here in verse 10, verse 9, it says, when they approached Ecbatana, the angel said to the young man, brother, today we shall stay with Raguel. He is your relative, and he has an only daughter named Sarah. I will suggest that she be given to you in marriage, because you are entitled to her and to her inheritance, for you are her eligible kinsman. The girl is also beautiful and sensible. Now listen to my plan. I'll speak to your father, and as soon as we return from rages, we will celebrate the marriage. For I know that Raguel, according to the law of Moses, cannot give her to another man without incurring the penalty of death, because you, rather than any other man, are entitled to the inheritance. And then the young man said to the angel, brother Azarias, I have heard that the girl has been given to 7 husbands, and that each died in the bridal chamber. Now I am the only son my father has, and I'm afraid that if I go in, I will die, as those before me did. For a demon is in love with her, and he harms no one except those who approach her. So now I fear that I may die and bring the lives of my father and mother to the grave in sorrow on my account, and they have no other son to bury them. But the angel said to him, do you remember the words which your father commanded you to take a wife from among your own people? Now listen to me, brother, for she will become your wife, and do not worry about the demon. For this very night she will be given to you in marriage. And when you enter the bridal chamber, you shall take the live ashes of incense and lay upon them some of the heart and liver of the fish, so as to make a smoke. Then the demon will smell it and flee away. You will never again return. And when you approach her, rise up, both of you, and cry out to the merciful God, and he will save you and have mercy on you. Do not be afraid, for she was destined for you from eternity. You will save her, and she will go with you. And I suppose that you will have children by her. And when Tobias heard these things, he fell in love with her and yearned deeply for her.
Wow.
Yeah,
Sean, can you imagine having that conversation along the way? Like you think you're just going somewhere, right? To collect some money. And
yeah.
all of a sudden you get this love bomb dropped on you. It's like, hey, by the way, we have this wife of yours that has been destined for you from eternity. That's an interesting thing. I'm sure every woman wants to hear that, right?
I know, right? Talk about like written in the stars kind of concept. This reminds me of the moment, the angel showed up to Abraham and Sarah and said, this time next year, you'll have a son. You should name him Isaac, because it's written on the heavenly tablets. And that's at least what it said in Jubilees. And I think that that's fascinating, because was my name written on that, was my wife destined to me, and it's just like, because I think of all the years that I went through, in relationships that weren't good for me, and learning from those, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then to a place where like I never felt like it was right. But then I met my wife now, and I'm like, oh man, everything's perfect. I'm not gonna mess this one up. You know what I mean? So like whatever I got to do to do right, and make sure that I make her happy, and I imagine his feeling here. And this guy, he's not apparently dating anybody back. And of course you're in captivity. So you're all kind of, this girl is not even in Nineveh. She's in a totally different country.
Yeah, she's in media.
In a totally different city. And by the way, for the viewer, in case you're wondering, in the previous episode, we talked about how Tobit and his family were given a little bit of favor, because Tobit's nephew, Ahikah, became a royal viceroy and in charge of, governance and to a certain capacity for the current king of Nineveh and Assyria. And so and I think his name is Azarhaddon at this time. And so this is why we can see Father Tobit tell son Tobit, go to this other country, even though they're quote unquote in captivity. Yeah, he still has freedom. It reminds me of that old Southwest commercial. It's like, you got the freedom to move about the country. You know what I mean? And it's just like, because he's got the freedom to leave the country, right? Yeah. And go to a different country, which, as far as I can tell, I think Medea is like just beyond the Tigris, which is what we call modern day Iran. And then Nineveh would be within what we call modern day Iraq. Yeah. So they're real close to each other.
Yeah, Upper Mesopotamia, I think.
It's like going from, one Canadian province to the other, right? Just real close by. But ultimately, that seems like, in our modern understanding of being like a spoil of war and being taken captive from war, you wouldn't think that they would have the freedom to just leave the country. You know what I'm saying? But these guys, like we looked at last week, Tobit's mother got a job when Tobit's father went blind, and then now Tobit has the ability to leave the country to go bring back some money. So it seems that the Hebrews, the Israelites, even in captivity, some of them are being shown favor. And here's the best part, Ken. Remember, we read about this in the Testament of 12 Patriarchs, that this was prophesied, that in the land of your captivity, you will be, and this is also in Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 4, that while in captivity, you will be shown favor with those to whom you're in captivity.
Yeah, that's right.
And we're seeing the fulfillment of this. And this is why Tobit's even able to go on this adventure, and this angel is telling him this about his, destined wife.
Yeah.
So like, it's because his father was following the commands of God in spite of all this bad stuff that was going down.
Yeah, it's so fascinating, and as long as they stay within the borders of the Assyrian Empire, they're good, right?
So basically, like, this is the extended benefit of the faithfulness of Father Tobit to be faithful to Yahweh, is that son Tobit now can find a wife who apparently was destined for him.
Yeah,
and whoever this Raguel is, he clearly is a Hebrew, right? Because verse 12 says that he's a relative and that he is following the law of Moses.
Yeah, exactly. So they're related. And what's interesting here is that apparently Tobias, Tobit's son, he already knows about this family because he's already heard about how Sarah has had 7 other husbands and that there was this demon that was creating some issues, right? So it wasn't like this was news to him. Like, he had no clue about who these were and the whole history with Sarah and the 7 husbands. But I just find that fascinating. And even more so, Sean, that Tobias isn't asking Raphael / Azarias, who he thinks he is, how do you know this information?
That's right.
How on earth are you able to tell? Are you a prophet, or like, what's going on here? Like, he's just taking his word for it, eh?
It is pretty interesting. And it makes me wonder, that kind of like I was talking about a few moments ago about the age of son Tobit that we're reading about, just how old is this guy? And because like when I was 20, I was extremely impressionable, and if some dude showed up to me and was like, this woman is beautiful, so beautiful that a demon wants her and tries to scare away all men from her, and she's destined for you from eternity. Like, I don't know if I would have asked him any questions after that. I would have been I would have been kind of love struck immediately and kind of being like, oh, I want to see this girl. You know what I mean? Like, who is this?
Man,
but
he chalks it up pretty romantically because he's like, you will save her and she will go with you and you will have children by her. And
it
sounds perfect, right?
But how hilarious is it, though, that Tobit's the son had already heard of her through the grapevine.
Yeah.
Right? He's like, wait a minute, we've heard of this girl. This girl's had like 7 husbands and they all die on the wedding night. Like, I don't want to be the age.
And she's in Ecbatana here.
Yeah, and it's just so funny how, like, clearly word has spread throughout the region about this girl. So I think that's interesting. Okay, so one last point of note here, and this kind of lines up with a theme that we've actually seen in the canon. Okay, and that would be Genesis 6. And let's be honest, not even Genesis 6. It's actually a kind of a theme that we see perpetrated all throughout the Old Testament for Baal worship, which is the idea of taking the daughters of people and making them cult prostitutes at the temples of false pagan gods, whom the Father calls demons, right? And we have this demon here that is lusting after this human woman and is literally killing people trying to, wed her, because of his desire for this human woman. Because of the nature of demons and their origin, they used to be, in the game, so to speak. They used to have bodies and be in the game and used to be men, and so it would make, and of course in the occult, it's always this idea of, virgins and girls and sex, and they're always strongly connected with ritual sex magic and all kinds of stuff that's demonic activity. And so it would make perfect sense that this demon would become obsessed with this beautiful woman and, physically try to oppress her life.
Yeah, absolutely, Sean. Absolutely. And before we do move on, I wanted to just point out two quick things. I love Raphael's kindness and how he presents himself. He's always using the word brother. Brother,
Yeah.
listen to me, brother. And we're going to brother Gabael, and we're going to go to brother Raguel. Like they're our brothers, right? These celestial
Yeah.
beings above, they consider us to be brethren, so we should as well. And the second thing is in verse 12, where it says that, for I know that Raguel, according to the law of Moses, cannot give her to another man without incurring the penalty of death, because you, rather than any other man, are entitled to the inheritance. So what's being displayed here, Sean, from the law of Moses specifically? One thing that I think about is the whole kinsman redeemer thing, right? That's a very prevalent thing that we see throughout the scriptures, obviously in the book of Ruth, but it's always keeping things in the family, right? It's an obligation for someone like Tobit to go over and be the husband to Sarah, because they are kin, and it's in his inheritance to do so, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And for whatever reason in this region, this is why verse 11, the angel says that Tobit is the only eligible kinsman and this would make perfect sense in my opinion, because to be a part of Israel, and this is why you have the mention of the law of Moses, in my opinion, is remember how at the beginning of last episode, in the first few chapters of Tobit, we saw that Father Tobit was faithfully keeping the commands of Yahweh, which means he was keeping the terms of the covenant, which means he was doing covenant. He's in covenant. He, according to the concept, is considered Israel. But some of his brethren who went into captivity, remember, because I think it was like at the beginning of chapter 3, he was celebrating the Feast of Pentecost and he invited others in. But like he said, only those who are willing. Yeah. Because as we see in this book, and as we see also in like 2 Chronicles 30, there's a lot of people from the northern tribes that were not willing because they did not want to worship Yahweh. So therefore, regardless if they were born into the bloodline of these tribes, regardless if they had been circumcised on the 8th day, they did not want to worship Yahweh. They're not in covenant with Yahweh. And they don't care, right? They're not a part of Israel according to the definitions of being grafted into Israel, or, through your faith and obedience in the covenant. So to say that Tobit the son is one of the only eligible kinsmen in this land of captivity, where they're few in number already, and out of the few in number, you only have a few of them who are actually faithful to Yahweh. So it's not just about, is he born of Israel? It's about, you're actually following the commands of God, and so is Raguel and his family. So therefore, you're one of the only eligible kinsmen for this inheritance, because you guys are both of Israel. And this is a big deal, which is why he then invokes the idea of, according to the law of Moses, you cannot give her to any other man without incurring the penalty of death, because you can't give her to a Canaanite. You can't give her to someone that's not, that's a very strict command in the Torah about giving your daughters to people of the land of promise that were there by sedition. And so,
excellent. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that's, to me, that's where this kind of runs into that semantic use of the term Gentile and Israelite, right? Yeah. So even bloodborne Israelites who had rejected Yahweh, well, suddenly they're Gentile because they're out of covenant. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean, like Paul tries to explain to us in Romans chapter 2, your circumcision means nothing if you're not keeping the commands, if you're not faithful to God. So it's like, it was all about your heart. Are you doing covenant ways? Are you following his commands? And that's why he's the eligible kinsman in this case.
Yeah. So. Amen.
Okay. Brother. Sorry for ranting there.
Oh, good. Yeah. I'll move on to chapter 7.
Cool. Sounds good. Bud.
When they reached Ecbatana and arrived at the house of Raguel, Sarah met them and greeted them. They returned her greeting, and she brought them into the house. Then Raguel said to his wife, Edna, "How much the young man resembles my cousin Tobit." And Raguel asked them, "Where are you from, brethren?" They answered him, "We belong to the sons of Naphtali, who are captives in Nineveh." So he said to them, "Do you know our brother Tobit?" And they said, "Yes, we do." And he asked them, "Is he in good health?" They replied, "He is alive and in good health." And Tobias said, "He's my father." Then Raguel sprang up and kissed him and wept. And he blessed him and exclaimed, "Son of that good and noble man." When he heard that Tobit had lost his sight, he was stricken with grief and wept. And his wife Edna and his daughter Sarah wept. They received them very warmly, and they killed a ram from the flock and set large servings of food before them. Then Tobias said to Raphael, "Brother Azarias, speak of those things which you talked about on the journey, and let the matters be settled."
Yeah, it's beautiful. So they're weeping, and in my opinion, it's because, like I said, there's kind of a few of them left,
Yeah,
and they're all in captivity. And as we read from the last chapter, apparently, before Esarhaddon take over and King Sennacherib was still in power, it was just a free for all on Israelites. They were just killing them at random.
yeah,
Remember, it said even the roads were unsafe, and so yeah, it was just like a open season on randomly killing Israelites in Assyria, basically. So yeah, they're few in number. You find a family member, and he even has a resemblance of someone because he's the son.
yeah,
Yeah, just it would be a joyful moment.
absolutely.
Definitely would be. Um, but yeah, I don't see a lot in here, honestly. I mean, other than just the reaffirmation of that Tobit is saying that he is from Naphtali and that they're captive in Nineveh, which we kind of covered last episode.
Yeah,
The historical significance to the canon there.
yeah. I've got really nothing more to add, to be honest, Sean. Other than
Okay. I'll pick up the rest of the chapter here in verse 9.
I was just going to say that the wife Edna has the same name as Enoch's wife.
Yeah, that's right.
That lovely name.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. So verse 9, he says, so he communicated the proposal to Raguel, and Raguel said to Tobias, eat, drink, and be merry, for it is your right to take my child. But let me explain the true situation to you. I've given my daughter to 7 husbands. Oh, Ken, can you imagine this speech?
Muttering this one under his breath real quick.
Yeah, I mean, Tobit already knows the story, but can you imagine the father feeling obligated to full disclosure here? Okay, sorry, let me get back to the verse. Verse 11, he says, I've given my daughter to 7 husbands, and when each came to her, he died in the night. But for the present, be mercy. But for the present, be merry. And Tobias said, I will eat nothing here until you make a binding agreement with me. So Raguel said, take her right now in accordance with the law. You are her relative, and she is yours. The merciful God will guide you both for the best. And then he called his daughter Sarah, and taking her by the hand, he gave her to Tobias to be his wife, saying, here she is. Take her according to the law of Moses, and take her with you to your father. And he blessed them. Next, he called his wife Edna, and took a scroll and wrote out the contract, and they set their seals to it. And they began to eat. And Raguel called his wife Edna and said to her, sister, make up the other room and take her into it. So she did as he said and took her there. And the girl began to weep. But the mother comforted her daughter in her tears and said to her, be brave, my child. The Lord of heaven and earth grant you joy in place of this sorrow of yours. Be brave, my daughter.
Yeah, Sean, I can't imagine how hard that would be for this father Raguel to proposition his daughter in such a way where he's not going to flee out the door right away. I mean, he's obligated to speak the truth,
Yeah.
and clearly we know that Tobias already knows about it because it's been throughout the land. it's already known. But the way I envision him having this discussion is just, I have given my daughter to 7 husbands, and one each of them have died in the night. But be present, be merry.
Yeah. So it's a couple things here. This guy Raguel, not only is he apparently he's a perpetual optimist, because his optimism hasn't been dismantled 7 previous times, or he hasn't let it get to him to where he's jaded. Right, he's still hopeful for Tobit.
We're going to see. I think the next chapter, the following one, he's already digging a pit for him.
Yeah, he's digging a pit for him, but he's still putting on an act for Tobit to be like, look, go in, be merry, and he's not saying no one can marry her anymore. He's at least still trying. But what's interesting to me is Exodus 22, because this was something that when Lindsay and I were doing one of our Kingdom portions a while back, and in Exodus 22, it talks about, it's kind of like a parallel. I think it's with Deuteronomy 22 as well, but the idea of a woman who has a contract as far as relations with another man. Yeah. So two things here. Not only are we seeing, and that as far as I can remember from the canon, we don't actually see an actual paperwork contract for marriage. So this is interesting, right? That we're seeing that here, because that's kind of always been assumed, but you didn't know. How did they actually seal a marriage, other than the sex part? So, but what's interesting here in Exodus 22, it says if a woman, if there's a guy that's her suitor and he takes her to wife, but then the father rejects him, then the I believe it's the son has to pay the father, or the dowry or the purchase price, or basically there's an exchange of value paid for the loss of the girl's virginity.
Yeah, it was like 100 silver shekels or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah. And
Yeah,
so therefore retains her dignity and honor as a daughter of Israel, and she's not considered a harlot for
right.
being a fornicator, because she basically started engaging in a betrothal, and even to the point of sex with another guy before she got her dad's permission. But when it was brought to the dad, he's like, "No, you're not marrying that dude." But the conversation that's brought up was, well, what happens since he rejected that guy and they paid the price for her to retain her honor? The next guy that comes along that the father does approve of, he's going to have to, in my opinion, he's going to have to share some disclosure, right?
Yeah,
Like, well, she's not, because remember they had that whole test on the wedding night of whether the girl was a virgin or not.
right.
And if she wasn't a virgin, then she was considered to be playing the harlot in her father's house, and she could be killed. You know what I mean? So it was like it was a bad deal. Um, and so, Court, let me back up. I have to go look on that. I'm not sure if the penalty was death or not, but it was. Don't quote me on that one. I'll have to go look at that one. But it was very important for her to be a virgin on the wedding night, or otherwise, this clause in Exodus 22, whereas she had basically retained her honor through a lawful process, and because the father apparently didn't agree with the first guy. And so this to me is a unique concept. It's like almost like that idea is being at play here, where even though she didn't have any conjugal relations with these other 7 guys, he's still having to do some disclosure to Tobit. They're like, hey, you're the 8th guy. You know what I mean? It's like, just letting you know, man, none of them actually, took her physically, but you're the 8th dude.
Yeah,
So be married tonight. It's like, it's just interesting to me but I give props to this Raguel guy for going through the motions and being willing to have this conversation with him.
yeah, absolutely, brother. And I think you're referring to Deuteronomy 22:21, where
Yeah.
the girl actually she is to get stoned to death.
If she's not a virgin. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Because the parents can come out and they can actually show evidence. Because like the guy can just randomly claim she wasn't a virgin, right?
yeah,
And then try to just besmirch her character. And then the parents can come forth and show some sort of clothing that proves that she was a virgin. I didn't exactly know how that worked, but so yeah, but that pairs with, in my opinion, Exodus 22, where there's another law about, if the girl, kind of finds a man, but without the father's consent, basically.
yeah. No, I agree.
So
I agree for sure. It's an interesting
it's
order of operations, eh? It's
yeah,
we see, or we're going to read in the next chapter that Tobit goes in, and we're assuming, right, that they're consummating this marriage even before they're having the actual feast and the wedding ceremony, which is going to take place and all that. So I agree. It's a very important thing for the father to give the consent, right, and to give the thumbs
yeah,
up approval. And then as you said, it's an interesting thing that they're actually signing a contract, and then they go over like how much the father is going to give the son once they're married, and all, like the property and whatnot. But
yeah.
yeah,
Which apparently is going to make the son Tobit a wealthy man.
yeah,
So it's interesting. You want to pick up 8?
yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Chapter 8, verse 1. When they had finished eating, they escorted Tobias into her. As he went, he remembered the words of Raphael, and he took the live ashes of incense and put the heart and liver of the fish upon them and made a smoke. And when the demon smelled the odor, he fled to the remotest parts of Egypt, and the angel bound him. When the door was shut and the two were alone, Tobias got up from the bed and said, Sister, get up, and let us pray, that the Lord may have mercy upon us. And Tobias began to pray, Blessed art thou, O God of our fathers, and blessed be thy holy and glorious name forever. Let the heavens and all thy creatures bless thee. Thou madest Adam and gave him Eve, his wife, as a helper and support. From them the race of mankind has sprung. Thou didst say, It is not good that the man should be alone. Let us make a helper for him, like himself. And now, O Lord, I am not taking this sister of mine because of lust, but with sincerity. Grant that I may find mercy and may grow old together with her. And she said with him, Amen. Then they both went to sleep for the night. But Raguel arose and went and dug a grave, with the thought that perhaps he too will die. All right, Sean, this is interesting. Well, obviously for a few reasons here. we're seeing exactly what Raphael had prescribed working, right? The demon's fleeing as he's, making this concoction of the gall and putting it with the ashes of the incense, and
Yeah.
the demon's gone. He's fled. He's gone to the remotest parts of Egypt, which is quite a distance, isn't it, to be
Right.
from where they are in their location. And then the angel, I guess we're assuming it's Raphael that binds up the same angel. He follows him and binds him up.
I guess unless there's a specific angel over that part of Egypt that is, because we see something similar to this in the Book of Jubilees. We see it twice. We see during the reign of Joseph, Jubilees claims that there was no Satan during that time, and then also during the 3 days that the children of Israel were fleeing from the actual cities that they were in Goshen.
Yeah.
It says that Mastema was bound, Satan was bound for 3 days. So then when he was let out, that's when he enticed Pharaoh to chase after him towards the Red Sea. And so it's interesting that it's all the way from Assyria to Egypt, this demon fled, and then an angel binds him up there.
Yeah, very interesting indeed.
Why not just bind him in Assyria somewhere? I don't know how that works, but I don't know, man.
Yeah. Sorry.
So go ahead, man.
No, I was just going to make mention of something in verse 6, which it seems minuscule, but I think it is interesting. And it's the part where it says, you did say, like he's doing his prayer and he's saying, you did say, it is not good that the man should be alone. Let us make a helper for him like himself. So most people would think that he's clearly referring to Genesis 2:18. But what's interesting is in Jubilees 3, 4-5, it says, and Yahweh said to us, it is not good that the man should be alone. Let us make a helpmate for him. So we see here the plural, let us make a helpmate for him.
Yeah.
And that's apparently what Tobias is referring to here. He's quoting scripture, right?
He's not quoting Genesis, though. He's quoting Jubilees.
It appears that he's quoting Jubilees, which would give another thumbs up. If this book is good, it would give
right.
Jubilees.
Well, that's what we've kind of started noticing with many of these apocryphal books, right, Ken? Is that they really refer back to each other in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
And also, I was actually going to make mention of verse 6 as well, just simply because it is affirming, as far as us finding parallels to the canon, this here is affirming that Adam and Eve were the firstborn, the first created of mankind, and from them, all of mankind sprouted forth. So that's in accordance with Genesis 2. And then also we've got Matthew 5:19 verses 4 and 5, where Yeshua repeats this idea that in the beginning he made male and female from, and then also just the concept of just like you said, he's quoting the idea that Eve is intentionally made as the only wife and helpmate for Adam. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is that some people think, well, these apocryphal books, man, they're just like Gnosticism. I'm like, actually, this one is going away from that, because Gnosticism will claim there's like Lilith involved. There was another woman created for Adam, and that there was, there's all these other narratives that are much more complicated than what Genesis says. But here we have Tobit just repeating the simplicity of Genesis and even some of the specific wording from Jubilees about the Genesis account.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just brought that up specifically to show that, yes, I think he is quoting from Jubilees. I think it was part of their canon of scripture during that time. And I'm actually going to be making a video on this specific part in Genesis and Jubilees where it uses the words us, let us, in my Entertaining Angels series on my channel. So be looking out for that, brothers and sisters.
This part right here is, yeah, it's a very, like you said, it can seem to be just read right over, but I think it's a great point of note, because if he is directly quoting Jubilees, it would make sense that other canons around the world had Jubilees in their canon from the beginning. For example, like the Ethiopian canon, and also the Book of Jubilees was hidden with they're buried, I should say, or whatnot, in the vases or the jars of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah.
So clearly the people of times past who were in charge of, being scribes for the scriptures considered Jubilees valid.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it would make perfect sense that if we've got a book here that Ezra had made a copy of, that if he's he's quoting Jubilees, it'd be interesting.
Yeah.
So, do you want me to pick up the following verses?
Yeah, please.
Did you stop with 7 or 8?
We're at 11 now.
Okay. So then Raguel went into his house and said to his wife Edna, "Send one of the animals to see whether he's alive, and if he's not, let us bury him without anyone knowing about it." So the maid opened the door and went in and found them both asleep. She came out and told him he was alive. Then Raguel blessed God and said, "Blessed art you, O God, with every pure and holy blessing. Let your saints and all the creatures bless you. Let all your angels and your chosen people bless you forever. Blessed are you, because you have made me glad. It has not happened to me as I expected, but you have treated us according to your great mercy. And blessed are you, because you have compassion on two only children. Show them mercy, O Lord, and bring their lives to fulfillment in health and happiness and mercy." Then he ordered his servants to fill in the grave. And this he gave a wedding, after this, he gave a wedding feast for them, which lasted 14 days. And before the days of the feast were over, Raguel declared by oath to Tobias that he should not leave until the 14th day of the wedding feast were ended, that then he should take half of Raguel's property and return in safety to his father, and that the rest would be his when my wife and I die.
Okay. So Raguel's got some good news, right?
Yeah.
Perhaps just in case that he has the same fate as the other 7, I'm going to dig a pit here and hopefully I want to use it. And then he didn't. And he's doing all his blessings, right? And
he's excited. And he has to mention the idea that both his daughter Sarah and then Tobias, the son of Tobit, that they're both only children, and so it was a big deal back then, like, oh, who's going to carry on our family name and all that, and who's going to give us grandchildren, right? So, it was a big deal.
Yeah, and then in verse 19 we have him saying that they gave him a wedding feast, which lasted 14 days. So it was after they had already, we're assuming, they consummated, right, Sean?
Yeah.
Because they're not just being bunk buddies for one night, right? That's just
exactly right. Yeah, it's assumed that they sealed the deal, so to speak, on the marriage. Hey, quick question: do you think, since they're all kind of in captivity, not just in Nineveh, but in now, here's the thing: I don't know if Media, or the town of Rages, in the land of Media, was also under the thumb of Assyria. That I don't know, because I know Babylon comes in a few decades later and takes over Nineveh and takes over Assyria, and has an extensive 127 province empire.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if they're under the captivity of Nineveh as well. It doesn't seem like it. But
they're in Ecbatana right now, right?
Yeah, they're in a different city of Ecbatana.
Yeah.
But what I'm asking though is, in this region, do you think, since they're only children, do you think there was maybe like a decree for all the Israelites they could only have one kid per family?
I don't know, man. Maybe.
I know it's a little bit of speculation, but like that would be extremely fitting if you wanted to eventually depopulate an entire people group, because what if they learned anything from Egypt, they realized what we found out in Exodus, that Pharaoh acknowledges that the Hebrews were more numerous and more mighty than the Egyptians, because over time they had outpopulated them.
Yeah, they were procreating like crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, they were strong and fertile. So I just wonder if, because we know Satan is behind this, right? He's trying to destroy Israel at all costs, and he's using other nations to try to do it, the heathen nations. So I just it would make perfect sense to me. You take over people, like we talked about last episode, right? You realized a direct frontal assault doesn't always work. So you got to trick them into actually transgressing the covenant with their God and start worshiping your gods, so that it enacts their God to treat them harshly and scatter them from their their protection, basically. And then you got them in your hands, to either do your wishes and thereby leaving the covenant, or if they're still trying to keep covenant, you try to hard press them to either stop obeying and stop worshiping their God, like we see in the book of Daniel, in multiple occasions, or you the more that you try to actually extinguish them, supernatural things happen. So you stop doing that over time, and you just either have to fool them into not worshiping God, or you've got to depopulate them.
Very fascinating.
It's just speculation.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering even just about the 7 husbands that Sarah had. Like, were these brothers, or were these random? No, not random. They had to be within the same type of family, right? Assuming that they're keeping the commandments here and doing it as they've been doing it. But I'm just wondering if this is like like I said in the last episode, if this could be the situation where we have one brother, he dies,
Yeah.
the next brother comes in, and then
Yeah. Honestly, like I know the Sadducees pose that question, but the reality of it, and this doesn't mean it didn't happen. I just personally, I feel like by the time you get to brother 3 or 4, they're going to be like, "Hey, throw the sandal at me. I don't care. I'm not taking this girl." You know what I'm saying?
get the spit on the face and have the name of
Yes,
the
spit
handle.
on me, call me the house of one sandal. I don't care. Like I'm not taking this chick. She's death. You know what I mean? So like, I just feel like I don't know, to find 6 other noble dudes that are going to step up like that. I don't know. And also, I don't know if was it intention if you were single or like, because, um, did you have to be single or did you have to already be married with that law that you had to take your brother-in-law's wife?
That's a good question.
And were they truly wed if they didn't consummate the marriage? So I guess there's a couple caveats there I gotta weed through, but
Yeah. Good question.
either way, it's very interesting, man.
Do you want to move along, or is there?
Yeah, we'll go to chapter 9. This is a short chapter.
I'll read that one real quick.
All right.
Chapter 9, verse 1. Then Tobias called Raphael and said to him, Brother Azarias, take a servant and 2 camels with you and go to Gabael at Rages in Media and get the money for me and bring him to the wedding feast. For Raguel has sworn that I should not leave. But my father is counting the days, and if I delay long, he will be greatly distressed. So Raphael made the journey and stayed overnight with Gabael. He gave him the receipt, and Gabael brought out the money bags with the seals intact and gave them to him. In the morning, they both got up early and came to the wedding feast, and Gabael blessed Tobias and his wife. All right, so we got the primary objective sealed here.
Yeah. Not a lot of, I mean, it looks like and while he's at the wedding feast, he sends the angel on a separate journey to get the money. And so that's, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But not a lot to discuss in this chapter.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder how Raphael did it. You know what I mean? Like, did he stay in character and actually journey there as a normal man who had to like get on a camel or a horse or whatever and do it? Or did he just like, as soon as he left the premise, just zap over there,
Hey, he could have had like all kinds of other missions on the way that we don't even know about.
It's true.
And of course, if he came and returned too quickly, he would have rose suspicion.
Yeah.
All right, Ken, here in chapter 10, it says, first one, now his father Tobit was counting each day, and when the days for the journey had expired and they did not arrive, he said, is it possible that he had been detained? Or is it possible that Gabriel has died and there is no one to give him the money? And he was greatly distressed. And his wife said to him, the lad has perished. His long delay proves it. And then she began to mourn for him and said, am I not distressed, my child, that I let go who are the light of my eyes? Excuse me, you who are the light of my eyes? But Tobit said to her, be still and stop worrying. He is well.
Yeah, so we have the optimist and the pessimist, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I get it. I can feel for this sister because look at the environment that they're in, right? I mean, there's probably bodies that they can see just within their proximity that are of their brethren that are just rotting, and it's just, I get it. But it's just interesting because little does Tobit know that his prayer is being fulfilled, right? It's being answered. He's got an angel, a really interesting, cool angel, Raphael, accompanying him on this journey. And I think he's trying to remain as optimistic as he can, because if he loses this son of his, I mean, he's lost his sight, he's lost a lot in his life, right? And it's just to lose this son of his on top of it, and then have to hear your wife say, well, how dare you send him away just for money? Didn't I tell you, like, it's not worth it? That would suck. But.
And in that culture back then, they're also talking that, which they've already mentioned, is they've lost their future, the staff of their old age. They've lost someone that would support them
Yeah.
as they grow older, even to the point of burying them, meaning they lost their retirement caretaker, right?
Yeah.
They lost, like, what we pay in our modern society great amounts of money for people to go into retirement homes and people to look after them and take care of them. The family naturally did back in the day, and she's like, who's going to take care of us when we're old? Who's going to bury us? Like, we lost the staff of our old age. And that's just, it's interesting, her disposition.
Yeah, that would be anxiety provoking. I mean,
Yeah, because he's blind, and so he can't produce income like he used to, and she's out there working a job, so she's it's very interesting, man.
yeah, it was. Well, how was it coined? I think back in what chapter was it, where it's like she's working woman's work? I think it
Right,
was.
right,
That's awesome.
right. And it
All
was
right.
like a big deal for her to get a bonus and get that baby goat as a bonus.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It seems like they have some dissension among their midst. They have some fighting, some trust issues. I mean,
yeah.
she's getting blamed for possibly stealing a kid, and when it wasn't even the case. And this poor guy.
And because they don't have cell phones, they don't know what's happening, right? So, like, it's funny how this mindset takes us back to, like, 1997, and when when no one had cell phones, you're like, hey, what's going on with this guy? Like, it's been 2 weeks, I haven't seen him. Is he dead? Has he been detained? And I think that this kind of goes back to what I was theorizing earlier, which is that they're living in a police state, basically.
Yeah.
They're like, was he detained by somebody? But ultimately, he's alive, and he's actually going on adventures, and he's meeting the woman of his dreams, right? The woman destined for him from eternity. So he's going to come back with all these blessings.
Yeah.
And I'll just read the rest of the chapter. Or I'm sorry, do you want to read the rest of the chapter starting in 7?
Yeah, I can read in chapter 7 or verse 7.
Okay, cool.
All right. Moving along here in verse 7, and she answered him, be still and stop deceiving me. My child has perished. And she went out every day to the road by which they had left. She ate nothing in the daytime, and throughout the nights she never stopped mourning for her son Tobias, until the 14 days of the wedding feast had expired, which Raguel had sworn that he should spend there. At that time Tobias said to Raguel, send me back, for my father and mother have given up hopes of ever seeing me again. But his father-in-law said to him, stay with me, and I will send messengers to your father, and they will inform him how things are with you. Tobias replied, no, send me back to my father. So Raguel arose and gave him his wife Sarah and half of his property and slaves, cattle, and money. And when he had blessed them, he sent them away, saying, the God of heaven will prosper you, my child, before I die. He said also to his daughter, honor your father-in-law and your mother-in-law. They are now your parents. Let me hear a good report of you. And he kissed her. And Edna said to Tobias, the Lord of heaven bring you back safely, dear brother, and grant me to see your children by my daughter Sarah, that I may rejoice before the Lord. See, I am entrusting my daughter to you. Do nothing to grieve her.
Nice.
Very nice.
Yeah. I think we've seen this. What did we see this in the book of Judges also, where the father didn't want to release the guy. He kept prodding him to stick around.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I can't remember what story that was in, but obviously there wasn't a marriage happening though, so it's a little different, but interesting. That's interesting. So he's getting the inheritance. Tobias is going back with wealth, property, slaves, cattle. So I mean, using the word slaves, they had a totally different mindset about slavery back then. They were basically, it's a bad word translated for servants.
That's right.
Because according to the law of Moses, which is what Raguel kept, they were not slaves without pay or without honor or without protection. They had the full protection of they had a household for health care, for proper, treatment, not to be abused, not to be mishandled, not to be, there was laws that protected the servants of the house. And many of them, if they had not willingly chose to be lifelong servants, they had an opportunity to leave at some point. So
yeah,
it's totally different than the mindset when we hear the word slavery today.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. 100%. Yeah. So what else do we have here? We have the honoring of the father-in-law and mother-in-law being requested, I guess. Yeah. And that would be what, Exodus 20?
Yeah.
Where it says, honor your father and your mother so that you will live long in the land that he's always going to give you.
Yeah, Raguel is definitely, he's definitely following the law of God. Yeah, he seems to be an honorable man. But, he doesn't want to let his only daughter go, right? I mean, who could blame him? I mean, he does, but he's just trying to procrastinate if he can.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing with, wasn't it Jacob and Laban? Where
Yes,
he's
that's right. Yeah.
trying to keep him like, stay here. No, I want to go. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I mean, but like we were talking about in the last chapter, it's you got these parents worried, right? And they're at the point where they're at the end of the road looking for him. Like, come on, he's supposed to be back already. What's going on here? And Tobias is just trying to be a good son, and not give him a premature death because of his absence. But
Yeah, and this is and now he's heading back, right? So we've got the we've got a huge caravan coming back now, actually. So now we have the son Tobit, his new wife Sarah, their servants. They're coming back with livestock. They still got the dog with them, right? They still got Old Yeller or Toto, whatever his name is. They still got him with them, and then also have the one of the most powerful angels of heaven just walking with them as well, which is amazing.
yeah,
And so they're coming back, and they're going to come back to blind Tobit and the worrying mother, and we're going to see an amazing reunion in the next episode.
yeah,
Yeah, it's going to be beautiful to the point where we're going to see prophecy, and we're gonna line that up to the canon of the 66 and see if it matches with what the other prophets have talked about, because that's a huge qualifier when we look at some of these apocryphal books. If they start making prophecies, it better line up with the other prophets. Otherwise, we got serious problems.
yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, so far we still have this book reaffirming throughout these last 5 or 6 chapters. It's strongly reaffirming the idea that they're encouraging respect for Yahweh, the God of heaven, and to keep his laws, which in this particular book, it even refers to as the law of Moses, which we see Jesus refer to it as well.
That's right. Yeah.
And as we know, just as a quick clarifier, most people know it's not Moses didn't come up with them. It's not like Moses's ideas. It's just Moses was kind of the one that was the leader during the time when they received the fullness of the law of Mount Sinai. So sometimes it's synonymously referred to as the law of Moses or the law of God.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and just want to say thank you, brothers and sisters, for joining us on this episode. I know that there wasn't much corresponding to the canon of 66, if you will, because of the story and how it was laid out. But it's a great book. I've had fun with you, Sean, going through these chapters, and I'm looking forward to the next episode where we're going to get, as you said, into some of these prophetic utterances and see if they line up with the rest of the prophets.
Yeah, it's an exciting conclusion to this book. So we're going to review it next episode, and we want to invite everyone back. So again, if you haven't already subscribed to Ken's channel, go ahead and do that. Click the subscribe and the little bell to the right. That way you're notified when he puts out the videos. Same here for our channel here at Kingdom of Context. And you're welcome to go through the playlists and peruse our other videos and other weekly broadcasts. We do a lot of fun videos on a variety of topics from the context tree. And even our weekly Bible studies that my wife and I do on Friday night called Kingdom Portions. You're welcome to check those out as well. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and you think it blessed you, or any of the Honor of Kings episodes, because that's how we get the word out, and that's how we're able to keep doing this, as if we continue to have viewership and more people that are growing as a part of this audience, because it takes time for us to do this. So, we just want to know that we're blessing other people and it's a benefit to others. So let us know by like, sharing, and subscribing. Leave your comments down below. And we appreciate you for watching, and we hope to see you back here next week on Honor of Kings.